Okay, let's say a prayer and then we'll do what we're ever going to do tonight. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, beloved Master, Paramahansa Yogananda, saints of all religions, dear friend Swami Kriyananda, humbly we bow to you all. Help us to attune ourselves to your living spirit, that we may understand ever more deeply how to serve you, how to be instruments of your light, how to live in your consciousness. Om, peace. Amen. Let's just meditate for just a minute or two. Om, peace. Amen. So, shall I just start with a few facts? I mean, do you have anything in particular that you want to hear from me? I wrote all those letters, but is there anybody who has any intention, or are we just going to ramble on? Okay, we'll just riff, as we say. In these trips that I've been taking, I sort of build because different people have ideas about what we can do. And in Europe, I ended up getting connected with Bhakti Mark, who's been doing the Spanish language thing earlier, a year ago, or maybe it was 2 years ago. She had me sit at the table at Spiritual Renewal Week with all the Spanish-speaking people and give a satsang, at the end of which, and there were 4 or 5 countries there, and at the end of which, a number of them asked, why don't you come here, why don't you come there? I said, I go where I'm invited. So I was invited, basically, is what happened. So last spring, Bhakti Marg arranged Argentina and Ecuador. And I like the Spanish-speaking world. I like the spirit, and it's fun, and it's very open-hearted. So she really wanted to do a major effort in Spain, because Spain is an obvious place for us to develop because of India. So Spain has been developing for a long time. So there were 3 major places where we had energy, and it was León and Sevilla, and Elche. And then Darshan in Ananda Sisi and Arudra have been responsible for moving out from that country. So they just, because I can finance it, and we have just sort of a system for being able to do it, basically I can facilitate outreach in ways that are not directed toward me. I'm just an instrument of it. I mean, I'm not trying to build anything myself. So, and that was the same with Bhakti Mark. She saw that I could make it happen. Also because of the Instagram, it's a way to communicate. I'm more known as an individual than many of the other people at Ananda because of all that Instagram. I also found out recently it's in my horoscope, something to do with, and I never know what the words are. My personality is in the house of career, which I'm identified as an individual. I always have been. I'm always a representative of Ananda, but this face and this name have always been more known than in a general sense. And Instagram is all based on personality, so it really is happening. So anyway, so this whole trip got set up for all those reasons, with the addition of France, because 2 years ago, somebody, probably Darshan, set up a program in France, and we went. I'm like pointing like this is like a place. We went there. I don't have any geography. It could have been there. It might have been there. I really don't know where it was, but we went there in France, and they called it Francophone, people who speak French. So it was from Belgium, from France, from French Switzerland. Would there be any other? I think maybe it was from those, and from France proper. But there was only like about 8 people there, and actually they all spoke English. So we did the whole thing in English, which was a great joy for me, except when we did Kriya. Darshan did the vow in French, so they could say it in their own language. But that sparked energy there, so we went back to France. And then we did the whole Latvian states, and the whole Baltic states. I have no idea why. My genetic material for organizing these trips is completely used up. It's absolutely gone. So I don't have anything to do with organizing it. Whatever they ask me, I just say yes, except I will not share a house with 6 people if there's only 1 bathroom. That's the point at which I draw the line. And I have to have a private room. I cannot share my room with anyone. I will share my bathroom, but only if it's not the only one in the house. But and so all the topics, all the timings, I can't see it. My mind is gone on that. So it's very fun for me. The whole thing about the travel is actually, it is, oddly enough, the easiest job I've ever had, because I have great friends and great crew. They're all super organized, and they all just know everything. And I can just go into this just almost like a babe in arms kind of thing, where it's like, why would I have an opinion? Most of the time I can't speak the language, and I have no idea what the systems are, so even if there's a problem, I can't solve it, so what good would it do? So I get to just move around with the state of mind and rest. Saranya, you just got eaten by her head, yeah. Okay. I get to just move around with the kind of relaxation which is completely unknown. You know, I came back here and then I have 16 diverse things to do, or 25 diverse things. And it's not that I'm really complaining, it's just that it's very, very different. Let me just say a couple of more things on that point. Let me find it for a minute. So it's been a really extraordinary opportunity for me in absolutely the most supportive circumstances, to just live in the moment without whatever happens is fine. I mean, fortunately, I don't have to earn back money in order to make it work. When the very first lecture tour that I ever went on, it must have been about was before the community burned, so maybe 1975, 74. I don't remember. Swami still had his big blue Ford, this big blue car, huge blue American car that they bought for $75 from an auction, a government surplus auction. They bought two, one to cannibalize for parts and one to drive. And he lent the car to us, which was really generous for him. And Agni, Sahadev, Nalini, Durga, that would have been the four of them were the singers, and me, and the five of us got into that car. And it was a really big deal. We were going to, I don't know how far up the coast we drove, but we might have gone all the way to Washington. We went up to Washington State. There was no Seattle group or anything. And we got the whole thing planned off, and then I went to Seva to get some money. I think we were going to be gone for 3 or 4 weeks, although maybe not quite that long. She gave me $50. I said, Seva, there are 5 of us. This is a gas guzzler of a car. We're going to be gone. All these. She says, that's all the money I have. And so we just set off. So we had to get money in each place, or else we would have had to stay there forever because we. Which was more or less, attractive to people depending on who they were. But, and we all slept on the floor of people's living rooms, and there was no business of the private room or the one bathroom. I mean, forget it. But we had a great time, absolutely a great time. There's some photograph somewhere. I should try to find it, of all of us sitting on the hood of the car. I'll ask Lakshmi, she probably knows where that is. And somehow, in the course of that trip, just to give you a contrast, this is a point of contrast. Somehow, in the course of that trip, only a few of you still know Agni because he hasn't been with us for a number of years. But Agni and I were brother and sister who were always arguing. In a super childish way, there was nothing mature about the way we related at all. Somehow, in the course of things, Agni was driving the car, I was in the back seat, and I had this white cotton sock, and I was garroting him while he was driving. I was pulling on the thing, and he was driving the car. How we got to that point is obscure to me. It's just a living memory of one memorable moment of a very memorable trip. By contrast, this is a 5-star tour in terms of tours. It's partly beyond me to travel at that level anymore, and so we do what we need in order to be able to carry on, because Atul and Kali, some of you met Kali at Thanksgiving. She's relatively new. She's a wonderful lady. And Atul's, it might only be a year or 2 maybe that he and I have been doing this. He does the videography. She was just the extra. And so she cooked and she just helped with everything. And God bless her, she kept her eye on me. So she always sort of knew when I needed something. And she speaks both French and Spanish. She grew up in Haiti. Apparently in Haiti you learn 3 languages. So she's fluent in 3. So, people would just get busy and they wouldn't realize that when everybody came up to talk to me in many of these countries, I was completely helpless. So I was always trying to get somebody to stand at my shoulder and, talk to me in English while they talked to me whatever they were talking to. The 3 of us, yes, but the 3 of us traveled for 3 months, almost 3 months exactly. And, it's a lot of day after day after day. So you have to have a base level. And by the grace of God, I'm supported at the level that we can do this. And we get money back, but not a lot. We spend a lot more than we do. But being able to spend it allows us to give people a chance to try to really make something happen. So with Bhakti Marg, who's been doing this for a long time, we went to Spain. And Dambara went to South America with us in the spring. And Manisha's wonderful about supporting him because he loves to travel and she doesn't. But 3 months was too much after being gone a month. So he took the middle month. I think he slightly regretted his decision. So we took Sergio and Narayani to Spain because, of course, Narayani speaks Spanish and Sergio can do the music. So that was a lot of fun. And I was the only person in the group who didn't speak Spanish. Atul, of all the weird things, born in Delhi, came to the U.S. when he was 6. He speaks English to the world, Hindi to his mother, but he majored in Spanish, of all things, and went to live in Spain. So Atul is there chattering away in Spanish with everyone else, and I'm the only one, which meant that there was somebody who could talk in my ear a lot of the time. I mean, I can communicate really easily if somebody will just help me just this much. What you have to do, though, when I always have to say, talk to me, even though you think I don't understand, but if somebody's talking right to you, even if you don't know the language, and by now I know French was impossible, I've never heard it, but Italian and Spanish I've heard enough. But if they talk right to you, you can get a lot from intuition. I remember Rosanna, when she first came to live at Ananda, and she just basically spoke no English. She said later, when she spoke no English, she actually understood a lot. When she began to speak a little English, she understood less, because now she was going with intellect, and the intellect was changing it. And then, of course, she finally learned to speak well, and then she could do it all. But so when we went through Spain, this characterized the whole trip, but it started in Spain. For some reason, this was an extremely happy trip. And in Spain, I don't know why, we just laughed all the way through. Everywhere we went, it was just fun. And in fact, at the end of this trip, Atul and Kali and I said there wasn't one unhappy day. I mean, there wasn't even one difficult day. Every single day was absolutely delightful. I got impatient for 10 minutes once at the very end in Napoli, when we were trying to make this initiation. This real woman really wanted to be initiated as a disciple. And so we decided to do it then. There's a lot of energy focused, and so people really want something people who are on the edge want something to happen. The same thing happened in France. I think you saw it in my letter. And so, I am not concerned about the details. In fact, I really prefer it to be casual. I like it when we're understanding that what we're doing is not dependent on the circumstances. Do you remember that Kriya in New Zealand? It wasn't at Kavita's, but it was some other city.
The other guy.
Yeah, this man had been in New Zealand, had been the SRF leader in this town, Palmerston North, for like 30 or 50 years or something. And so he wanted us to do a Kriya for this little group that he had, 4 or 5 people. What's the right word you want? Colorful personalities, memorable personalities, all of them. And his wife, who'd been a disciple her whole life, now had dementia. And so we're in his house, and we're in a room in his house, and I think every pamphlet or book that he ever owned was in the room with us. And the altar was sort of something that would fold down and then pop up, so we popped it up. And the wife's caretaker came a little early, so she came to the Kriya in her pajamas and her robe because she'd already been prepared for night. And she didn't have a lot of rational process, but she knew what a Kriya was, and she remembered Master. So she's there in her pajamas, more or less not quite knowing, and the rest of them are colorful characters, each one. Not one of them was ordinary. And somehow we had the recorder in the box, or I seem to remember like you were carrying it in and out, and the whole room was not much bigger than the minister's room back there. And you and Aryavan, who else? Aunt Majoti. Yeah, that was the crew. Ondambara, too, he was with us. So we're all in there, and we gave a whole Kriya ceremony. And it was wonderful. And there wasn't like one piece of it that matched the normal way of doing it. I think on that same trip, I went to a hotel room and initiated someone. You went with me. We went to the hotel room and we set it up on the floor there and initiated that lady from Australia. So to my mind, I love to take all the formality out of it. Many people tell me that they were made kriyacharyas or light bearers by Swami in a restaurant or in the car. Just like, I think Ananda talks about that, Swami occurs to him, and there you are. And so now your whole life has a new direction. So now I started telling this because we were in this discipleship initiation. I knew it was just, but this was France after all. So some of the women felt that it was necessary that she be properly attired. So they, just when I was ready to begin, and there'd been a lot of, tides in the room. So just when I'm ready to begin, they have spirited her off upstairs. And she comes down and she looks like a bride, a bride in her sister's clothes. So she comes down the stairs. I grew impatient, but then I realized, what difference does it make? Who cares? If I'm impatient, in ceremony we won't have anything, so who cares what happens? So, and actually it was really quite lovely. It's part of it is, you just get it down to what we're really doing. You get it down to the fact that this woman's life is going to be totally different. And this was, I'm traveling like this, but for her, this was a single moment. That's part of what keeps you very, very wide awake when you're doing this, is that for you, this is the 28th day. And for this person, it's the first day of 3, not of 90. So you have to be 100% patient and present, because you just never know what the story is going to be. So her wanting to do this, and a surprising number of people ask you for spiritual names too. It's not hundreds, but it's like, okay. And the whole. From my point of view, many of you have known me forever, so we're just talking like this. Let me think how to say it. Because the whole story is built around this name and this face, even though this is the names and face that really matter, the whole exercise for me is to disidentify with individuality. And that also means to not be working from my own ideas. Just be whatever is there. And one of the things that really happened on this trip was I sort of began to understand that on a level that I didn't understand it before. So there was many things. This has been true of my whole life with Swamiji. Many things that he said about himself, or that I knew about him for one reason or another, the longer I live, the more I say, oh, that's what he was talking about. That's what it was. I'm not at the point where he was, where he can say, now here's an important point, as he told us, and not have any idea what the point is, but he knows that an important point's about to happen. And be confident that it will. But I'm playing that edge, just playing the edge of, here we are, what were we supposed to talk about? Just let's do it. And then just see. And I had to learn this because a couple of years ago, or a year ago, in some of the places, like particularly Japan and South Africa both, I allowed myself to get confused by the fact that I was in another culture. And I did not trust my own intuition. I let my mind interfere with my intuition, if that makes sense. Instead of just saying what I wanted to say, I would think about where I was. And it really, really, really did not feel good. So ever since then, I've been working. It wasn't true it wasn't true always. That was the first trip, not the second trip to Japan. It wasn't true always there, and it wasn't true always in South Africa. But that was when I learned I just have to shut it out. I have to shut out everything except what is happening in the moment, and I just have to trust that what's happening is going to be okay. And you have to do it in 2 languages. In Latvia, I'd been trying so hard to get simultaneous translation, and we got it a little bit. We got it in small doses. In Latvia, that's your country, yes? In Latvia, there's Russian and Latvian, so we actually had 2 simultaneous translations going on. One man over here whispering into the microphone in Russian, and the Russian Latvians over here with their cell phones and their earbuds, and then over here we had someone else doing it in Latvian and listening. You think it's not confusing because, you think the technology of it is only a part of it. The other part of it is everybody's getting the message at different times, and in 3 languages. And I'm trying to be in tune with all of this that's going on. So there were moments that were, that were just surreal about what is happening at this point. At one point she was, the Latvian was happening much too close to me, and it was, but I have to say for myself, I did pretty well. And that also is what made the trip really uplifting, is, despite all the driving and everything, the cars actually were fun. We would just get in these cars and we'd go for hours. And I wrote to you all, the rule of travel is it takes all day. We had to go once, we had to travel 2 hours, and we left in the morning and we arrived at night. Well, you also get kidnapped by your hosts. We're just going to stop and meet for coffee, but then they have an entire itinerary in which they're going to show you all the beautiful sights in their town and teach you the history of their town. And it's their moment. You can't not do it. And fortunately, I have so much Gemini, it's not that hard for me to say, oh, a castle, how interesting, when was it built? And I actually really mean it. I could also drive by without ever seeing it and not think about it, but once you're standing in front of it, you get very enthusiastic. What difference does it make? And also the other thing about it, of course, we would have a big weekend or something, like in France, we had this 4 or 5 days that they did a really outstanding job with that program. From 2 years ago, when we had 5 or 6 people, we had 50 or so at least, and for a whole weekend. And they were very, very dynamically interested, extremely so. It was really extraordinary. And we just poured ourselves into it, and our hosts, 2 lovely people now called Ananda and Janavi, and we were very, very interactive. Sometimes we realized we were there just for our hosts because they were the serious devotees. And I've thought about when Swami did his twice in 1 year. He did his what they called the joy tours, went back and forth across the country. Back and forth twice in 1978. And we didn't make any money. We lost, as I recall, the total loss was, at least for the first one, was around $30,000, which, as I jokingly said, well, that's breakfast for 4 in Palo Alto. That's not really a big sum of money, but then it was a huge sum of money. But then Swami, he justified the trip by naming the people. In Denver, we met David Praver. In Houston, we met Bildo Cicero Krishnadas. When we were out somewhere over here in the United States, Mary Kretzmann and Tim. Up in the north, in Washington, D.C., he met Latika, and Naidruva came from Latika came from Washington, Naidruva came from New York. And you could just go across like that. And I heard him say that multiple times, and he was partly talking about it even in terms of the money. When you think how much abundance and prosperity those people brought to Ananda, to think of it only in terms of whether the travel actually made a profit was really naive. But it also occurred to me, maybe that's why we went to those cities. Like, why I organized one of those trips for him. Shivani organized the second. He decided the cities, and I don't have any idea how. And now I can't remember any discussion about why those cities, but we didn't know anybody anywhere. So it wasn't like with me where we're going, where we have someone. But I thought, well, he just felt Krishna Das calling him. He felt Mary and Tim calling him, and he just went. And it was well worth it. Think about Master's prayer. I'll come 1 trillion times if necessary for one person. So that has always been my philosophy. In fact, even all the time I was just teaching here, I had a policy. I never counted how many people were in the room. If you asked me afterwards, I could think of the room and give you an idea, but I would never count, because we're not a popular movement. And I don't know by the time, it's going to be generations before we are. And so it isn't a matter of how many are in the room, it's how serious, if there's one receptive soul, it's worth the whole trip. Master talked about when Oliver Rogers was talking to Master, and he talked about that Oliver was at a lecture in the balcony of a concert hall when there were 5,000 people in the room. And Oliver was there, but it was a number of years before Oliver came to Master at Mount Washington. And so Oliver was talking to Master about that, and he said, I saw you first in whatever city it was. I was in the balcony, and Master said, oh, I remember. 5,000 people, but that was the one who put out the end. And I can speak to that. When there's a room full of people, there will be usually a few, sometimes, a good handful, who are just in a completely different relationship to what I'm doing than the rest of the room. And the rest of the room will be active, but the whole thing will be like that. And it's not necessarily even that those people will walk up to me afterwards. They have their own, but that's why I'm here, is basically what it comes down to. And in some cases, the primary reason was our hosts, because they just needed that. Even people who have been on this path for a long time, but don't live in community, there's just this gap in understanding what it is to be a person on this path. And people just, how would they know? And so our crowd, kind of just comes in, and we're all very much at ease. There's nothing pretentious about what we do. And I received the ultimate praise from Atul. This was last year. He didn't know me that well until last year when we traveled, or then, and he called me, I love this, the smartest goofball he's ever met. So that became my sort of title. But what he meant by that was, we're not inhibited. We just move with whatever we're doing. We laugh a lot. We make jokes. We do the needful. He sort of said that that was when we were in Italy, and we were up somewhere, and there was a group of African young people who lived in Italy, and they would come up to this hilltop place, and they put on their music and they'd dance. And so they were all, it was really fun, and they were all dancing like that. And I was sort of somehow engaged with it, but I was doing it, I think, hanging from the roof of the car. I don't exactly remember, the door was open, something like that. That was when he pronounced it, because we're very unexpected. Many people who are spiritual are somewhat sedate, and we're not. It's just, I was with Rudra and Darshan. These are old pros in addition to us. But what they tells people is that you can be deeply devoted to God and just be yourself. In fact, you get to be more of yourself. So Swami traveled when he did his back and forth with 12 people. Sometimes on that trip, they outnumbered the audience. But it's very important that there be more than just me, because people sometimes are a little shy about approaching me. And also, they see me in a different light, whereas if there's a whole crowd of us, and also they watch other people interacting with me, it also gives them a more natural idea of what's appropriate and what isn't. Otherwise, it startles me because I'm not used to this. But I've just learned a lot, and I remember all my years with Swami, and I sort of get the picture a little more than I did. But where were we? We were no place geographically. I was just talking about it. So, Spain. That's where I was saying. Spain, for some reason, I don't know. It was so much fun and we lived in these every place. We had 3 places, and we had these huge accommodations. In Elche, we had this incredibly big house that was the ocean. I mean, or maybe it was the bay of something or another, but it was waves and everything. And it was, here's the back door of the house, and Ishani was the ocean, the whole ocean, not just, I think actually the ocean has been encroaching on those houses, but it just boomed. We were there for at least a week, and it just boomed all day and all night. It was quite something. In the front door of the house, this long hall, and you'd come in the front door, and the doors would be open just like this is here, and that's the ocean was right there. So you'd come in the front door, and that one was fun. In Sevilla, we were in an apartment which was a lot smaller, but it was also fun. In León, we were, let's see, León, there was a big house. There's one more place which I can't remember the name of it. It's called the White Jimenez, but there's more to the name than that. Jimenez de something or another, right? And it's what's called the White Villages of Spain. It's in the hills there. And so we were in this big hacienda sort of thing. There was a lot of mix-up that day, and after I finished this, I think it was almost a whole day of classes. It was a whole day program, and I was a spent force, so they bundled me. We had 2 cars. They bundled me into the one car so we could go right up to the hacienda, because it was mountainous, and Sergio and me and Miguel, who was driving us. Mariani must have been in the car also. Okay. The only problem was that the key to the hacienda, of which there was only one, was with Bhakti Marg, who was in somebody else's car. And then she finally got into the big van, and then Ramon was in such a narrow street that somehow something happened, and the van got actually hung on the corner of a building like this. So it was just hung on the corner of the building. So the only picture in my mind is that I am going to take a nap, because I think even we had a satsang that night or something. So we finally get there. We get to the gates, and we all realize that nobody has the key. And we'd already been outside there once, and we knew there was no way to get in. We scouted it, but there was no way. So I'm just like this, and we're sort of dealing with this. And then it occurs to me that homeless people sleep on the ground all the time. And I just got out of the car, and I went up in front of the gate, and I just stretched out on the dirt. I mean, why not? So that
WhatsApp messages make a lot of sense, because I just saw pictures of it, but there was no context.
No context. So I slept on the ground for whatever, and by the time I woke up, we were all just milling about. So first we're like, and then Bhakti Marg vaporized somehow. The car was hung up. They were all stuck there in these tiny streets, and we had this big van. So we're stuck there. All these people materialized out of nowhere. Just materialized. And then there was, spectators on the balconies, and these people came down, and somebody had the chain. Somebody else, big truck, comes down there, pulls the thing up like this. At one point, Atul said the most fun part was the van was so big, it was completely blocking the intersection. There was no way to get by. So all of a sudden, Atul looks up, and this old man and his wife and their child with suitcases have opened the door of our van and are getting into our van, which is like, okay, right, like that. Nobody quite knew why. And they just get in, but it was the only way they could get to the other side. So then they opened the other side. And they just walked through the van. This is all while I'm sleeping on the ground, but but finally, I mean, because we just had no idea, and nobody knew where Bhakti Mark was, and she has the key. Somehow, in the course of the van getting stuck, she either called someone or saw someone, so she just got in somebody else's car, but she didn't tell anyone. So not only do we not know where the key is, we don't know where Bhakti Mark is. She's just basically gone. So finally, Sergio just pulls out his guitar. And when I woke up, we're having a little kirtan. And so she shows up, she opens the gate. We don't even go in, we're just having such a good time. So finally we made a procession, into the house. And that was the spirit of the whole thing. It was really, really fun. It's like, well, this is where we are now. What are we going to do about it? Like this. And it was marvelous. But it turned out that, and we were very sad to leave Spain and to leave Sergio and Narayani, but we were going to see them again in Italy, so it wasn't so bad. But, and after there, where did we go after there? We must have gone to Italy. Yeah, we flew to Rome after that point and met up with Dambara. He joined us in Rome. And, I know I sent you countless pictures of luggage. It's impossible to give you a visceral experience of what all that luggage meant to us. We had so much luggage. And, every time you want to go anywhere, it's just this endless, when I guess it was in Japan, that at the end of the Japan trip, where we also had a lot of luggage, we had to pull it across the hotel lobby. We had to take up in the elevators. We had to push it down like this. I don't know at what point, but we're in the hotel and we have literally fallen on the luggage and are laughing so hard we can't stand up because it's just so ludicrous. This was much worse through the whole trip, especially when we got to the Baltics, because these places are walk-ups. They're not, and we were on the sixth floor of this place in Latvia, and the elevator's broken. And I'm skipping around, but when you're in the Baltic states, in Latvia and, let me just try to hold this. Latvia, that was 6 floors up, but a lot of things are still have the Soviet influence. So it's super utilitarian. The apartment was lovely. The stairwells are just these cement stairwells, just absolutely nobody puts anything into it. And 6 long flights, double flights up. And all our suitcases weigh 50 pounds. It's just, God, those guys were so, I would just stand somewhere and but they would just lug them up and lug them down. And then the recording equipment up and down and up and down and up and down. And we got, they were nice about it, but it was quite something. And then the other principle that came out of New Zealand was it always fits. It's just a rule. It always fits. You don't ration. That was, some of our traveling party didn't know that, and so they were making decisions based on the fact that there wasn't room in the car. And I remember there was this whole decision happening that we couldn't help out our hosts with something they needed because there wasn't room in the car, and I said it always fits. And I started calling Aryavan's name. We were in Kavita's big house because I knew Aryavan understood that it always fits. So I just remember standing there just calling out, in the house, Aryavan, Aryavan! I think you were Brian at the time. And you came down and I said, they think it doesn't fit. Oh, and he said, oh, it always fits. So we just went there and proved that it always fits. But we did find out that if you've really used the power of it always fits, the rule of it takes all day doesn't also apply. That somehow there's some, because the one day they didn't believe it would fit, really didn't believe, we ended up with the book boxes under our feet. But that's a step, that's the next to the last step. The step after that is the other boxes on your lap. But we never got to that one. But that same day, it didn't take all day. Perhaps because we were being so good with the books under our feet like this, But everybody just went with it. Nobody had any this is like, okay, it's what we're doing. I think it was because, and then I'm going to speak a little more seriously, there was something very unusual about the vibration of this trip. And I can't really, it's not to say that it was better or worse, it was just, it was different. There was some feeling of, what is the word? I'm going to try to just see if I can figure it out. We were kind of in another dimension. We really did not quite move in this dimension on this trip. It started in Spain and it just kept up the whole way. We were just like a quarter of an inch over from the material world. So that's why we could do all this travel and deal with all this stuff and go from place to place. And I was starting to say, like we finished in France and we're like, wow, that was really successful. And you have we flew from Marseille to Helsinki, which is not like what you would think of as a really highly traveled route. So we had to go to Amsterdam, and then it took all day, to get there like that. But when you get to Helsinki, they've been waiting, months and months, and they are just full of energy, and they're full of beginner's mind at that point. That's not where you are, but that's where they are. So you have to, recalibrate and just start over like that. And it wasn't an effort. You just had to always be exactly where you were. There was no room for you to have any other preference. There was absolutely no room for it. It was just so unfair because people had put out so much energy and it was so important to them. I had to disappoint a little bit because somewhere in there I caught a cold. And it lasted much longer than it usually does for me on the travel. But so I had to conserve my energy a little bit more, and I actually had to get a hotel room once or twice. But they were cramming us in too small a house, and I was just as glad to be able to be somewhere else. But still, you're just there to serve, and that's all you are. And that's service is extremely liberating because your consciousness is just on someone else. It's not on you. And then we did Finland and Estonia and Latvia and Lithuania, all of which is, Finland is, they pointed out to us that on the North American continent, nobody lives at those latitudes because it's just so cold. And we had what was called unseasonably warm weather, actually all through that area, because it never snowed and it hardly rained. And all I had to wear was my full-length down coat, my hat, and my gloves. I had this like child's mind about being in those areas that it was just so, essentially, emotionally, what I thought was that we were going to be in a snowfield, and we were going to have to live in the snowfield all the time, like no houses, nothing. And just mentally, I was just prepared to be constantly in the snowfield. Of course, it was ridiculous. It looks like every other part of the world looks these days. But but we were spared. In fact, the day we left that area to go back to Italy, in Lithuania, it started snowing. Yeah, the first snow happened as we were flying out. So I had a scene on the plane. We're flying from Vilnius. There was a T-shirt that said, I could never date someone who didn't know where Vilnius was. So, because it's not a name that in our part of the world is really common. That was Lithuania. That's Lithuania, am I right? Yes. But on the plane, I had been reading this book that Karen had recommended. It was about back pain. It was about healing. It was an interesting book, emotional causes and things like that. So this woman sits down next to me on the plane. She's reading. She has the same book on her lap. And I said, oh, I'm reading that book. That's a really good book. And she started talking to me. And she was very energetic and very interesting. She turns out she's a masseuse, and she's going to some seminar to learn things. She's very high level on all this. That's why she had the book and so on and so on. And I just was making connections with her, getting her information. She did sponsored a women's conference in Lithuania. She had 400 women come. She was talking about the three stages of a woman's life. You're a maiden, you're a mother, and then you're a crone. And then she was saying that, most of the women are maiden and mothers, and they don't have that many crones. I'll be your crone. I said, I'll come. I'll be your crone. She wanted me to come. This was a little bit before, so I'm giving her contact. I've never done this before. I clicked on the Instagram page. Just, intuition. This is what was so much fun. Intuition was all the way through. So, it's like, I have an Instagram page, I just, this page is not the right word. She had her phone.
And showed her your Instagram?
Did I open my own phone? Yes. Tell us that word, the Hebrew word for the.
Nachas.
Say it.
Nachas.
Nachas.
It's nachas.
Okay, explain to them what it means.
It's pride that you have, a mother would have for her child.
Okay.
I have such pride, but it's a mother now.
Okay, so here's what happened. Ishani was, pardon me?
Yes.
It's Hebrew. Oh, it's Yiddish? Okay, Yiddish, nachas. Okay, so this is, I'm just because of the camera, this is pride, a mother's pride that her child has shown, like, isn't that nice? My heart is filled with nachas. So Ishani was talking to me something about Instagram. Bear in mind that when the Instagram channel started working, I had to have somebody show me what it was. So I've not been really swift at this. And so she's saying something about somebody had made a suggestion, and this is what they wanted to do, and she was telling me, and I said, but that's not the way Instagram works. And she says, my heart is filled with nachas. Because her child finally knew something about what I was doing. So yes, I opened my own phone, and I stuck on it, and I showed her. She says, oh, I know you. I follow you. I forward all your posts, which is so goofy. I was remember how Swami told that story about, from many years ago, he was at some big conference, and he was talking to this woman, and then finally he asked her name, and then she said, what's your name? He said, Swami Kriyananda. And she went, but you're famous. And he said, well, maybe I'm known, but what do you mean, but you're famous? Well, every other famous person I met seems important. He loved to tell that story. That's how it was my moment, Like, when I'm not in a little square like that, and with her marvelous, graphics. You don't recognize me. But it was fun. And there were people, to give the Instagram credit, wherever we were at the end, we were back in Italy, in Padova, of course, the last city. That woman came all the way from Switzerland, from Geneva. I had her picture in there. She's actually works for the UN, and she works for human rights, and it's all because of the Instagram. Actually, it was very interesting. She was telling us that her boss in the UN, they work for human rights, which you can imagine what that is. She said that her boss is into meditation and mindfulness, meditation and breathing, and it's all part of their office, their corporate culture there. It's really an interesting thing to know. But she was looking for a little more than that, so she came to us. But she came all the way down just because of the Instagram. So it was quite enjoyable. So that might be the whole of it. I must say, when we finished in Padova, we had a really, really nice group there. And we figured out a long time ago, actually this goes way back to when we did the India tours, but we've been using this. When we were traveling to India on pilgrimages all those years ago, Swamiji had written that goodbye song, go with love. But when we were on pilgrimage, we were the ones who were leaving. But departures are awkward. How do you really close the energy? So with his approval, we rewrote the first two lines of that song, which instead of saying go with love, we said hearts unite in joyful blessing. Though we part, our love will stay. And he approved those lines. And so what Dambara and I have been doing for a long time is when the whole thing is over, when you're actually leaving, we would sing that song to people. And then there would be a real feeling of goodbye on the best possible level. May we be one in the light. And then you can get in the car and you can drive off like that. And then Kamala Devi recently put, it's a dance, but it's very simple, put hand motions to it. And so now we've been teaching it to everyone when we're leaving. And I don't think they had translated into any language. We'd have to just do it into English, but it's so short you can explain it. So when we were in Padova, we got everyone in this was the final thing, this giant circle, and it's hearts unite in joyful blessing, and then though we part, you're in a circle, but you step back, and then you touch hands together. Our love will stay. May God's light expand within you, and then you come back into a pranam, and then you pranam. May we be one in that light someday. So it was Italy. And Aaron was, who's now called Narada, was there, and he was playing the guitar. Rachel was there. And so we had this beautiful big circle, and it was so wonderful. And then it's done. And we actually had one more thing to do, but this was the last, one more day to do something, but this was the last real program. And we're just there. And it was very, very nice. And then Atul turns and he says, this is it. We're done. And I must confess, I was just, wow. We did this trip for so long that all memory of any other life was really gone. It was just away from my consciousness. People kept asking, are you anxious to get home? I didn't even think about here until the morning we were leaving the hotel, because it's not that I didn't know we were here. I was in touch all the time, but it wasn't like I wasn't moving, my consciousness wasn't moving ahead. That's what I really mean by that. Not that I wasn't thinking of you, but I was where I was. When I got up that morning and I put my stuff in my bag again, my big bag, and I realized that I wouldn't sleep again until I was in this house. And that's sort of when it becomes real to you, that the next time I sleep, I'm going to be sleeping in the... After one of the 2 nights here the other night, I woke up and I thought, wow, this is a really comfortable bed. And I'm vaguely wondering where I am, in such a comfortable bed. A couple of times in these days, I've had to stop and really think about where I am. But so we're here, and we're just done like this. And then Atul says, we're done. We finished it. And I felt this, just this wave of blessing is really the right word. Just like, wow, what a privilege to be able to share the teachings like that. And somehow Narada must have tuned in, and he starts playing Joya, Joya, Joya. And so suddenly, everybody's clapping and we're dancing. And there's a photograph, and the 3 of us are going like this, because we were the 3 who'd done the whole thing. But it was quite a moment to have that done. There you are. So that's basically a rather random story. Is that enough? Is there any questions or anything else? But I must say, I love this place. We are so, you meet so many people and they're lovely, but they're just out there by themselves. If they have a few friends or a small group, they're so happy, and we are just, buried in blessings. We get to serve, we get to be with each other, we get to have inspiration. People would give everything to have what we have. I just don't, I'm fortunate, very fortunate, my entire Ananda life. I've always been right at the front door. And so I'm always aware of what it feels like not to have this. So I've never, not literally for a minute, taken for granted or in any way not fully appreciated what this life is, because I'm always seeing people who don't have it. And I see what even the idea of it means to them. So it was and so we sang and danced for a good long while. Then the last part, which I wrote about, but it was we're going to Verona, and I'm back talking now again, Verona, and Terra de Luce, the land farm at Ananda has arranged for a concert in Verona to raise money for Terra de Luce, and they want me to speak and help them raise money. I don't speak the language. I've never met any of these people, but they had great faith in my power of persuasion. So anyway, we were there, and we go into this very nice hotel, and we go down, and we come into this very nice concert hall with the weirdest art on the wall, all these murals of semi-mythical creatures. It was very hard to tell exactly what they were and what they were doing, but columns and the grand piano, you saw the picture, and all the people in black and the women in their evening dresses, and they were great singers. Their singing coach is this woman who was a prima donna soloist and now is aged out of her performing days, but hasn't lost the flair. She had it. It was magnificent. We enjoyed it so much. They sang beautifully, and they sang Swami songs in this more operatic style. It was fantastic. And they raised a lot of money. I don't really even know what I said, but they seemed to like it, so it was fine. Okay, so I did put a coda on there, but that was really extra. Anything else, or is that it for tonight?
We are so happy that you're touching so many people, because we just feel the reflected pleasure. Even though you're not here, that you're able to do this and still come back home to us. But still, it feels like such a blessing that you can be out so long and meeting so many people.
I felt so privileged and so blessed. That's why it was also, as I was saying, there was some other quality. I don't know whether, except that we all felt it. I mean, I thought maybe it's just my own horoscope or something like that, but it was just, I don't know, Master seemed to be very pleased with us. Yeah, good kids.
Swami must be very pleased.
Say again?
I think that Swami must be very pleased as well.
You couldn't help but think because he asked me to do this, and it's, there are 200 people in the world who donate to make this possible. I mean, that is a lot of people in multiple places in the world. And more keep coming in because people want this to happen, and they're simply in no position to do it, and we are. So,
is there another one coming together for next year?
Next year is turning out to be really interesting. Question about next year. I don't have. Bhakti Marg's, Jyotish and Devi are going to be in Spain next year, so we're not going back to Spain. All the energy is going to be focused on them, which is exactly as it should be. Bhakti Marg also decided not to go back to South America this year. So at the present moment, I have 4 small, essentially domestic trips from now till July, then going to Assisi for 10 days or something. Don't have anything else. It's too soon for Europe to come together. I have an invitation to go to the Texas Yoga Retreat in October, which I may just try to do things in the U.S. and not take a long trip next year. I'm sort of waiting. I would like to write another book about Swami. I have to write another book about Swami because I have hundreds of pages of notes. And if I die without doing it, somebody's going to be really mad at me when they go in those files and tries to make sense out of them. And also, I have to do a lot on Instagram. I'm hoping, quite honestly, to earn a lot of money, because most people who have as big a presence as I have monetize it, and we've never tried to. For years, I would say, well, I don't need the money. And then, idiot that I am, I thought, oh no, I need millions and millions and millions of dollars to buy this community. And it occurred to me that it was improper of me not to at least try to earn as much as we can. So I think that this year I'm going to stay close to home, and we're going to do as much as we can to really build that up, because it's good work, but also just to make money, because we have a great need for a great deal of money, and it would behoove us to do our best to see how close we can come. I really have no idea. You know, what did you say, in 1 month? Where did that number come from? What was that number? 1.3 million. Where did it come from?
Oh, yeah, that was how many people, like a few of her videos went viral, and in 30 days, over 1 million people have seen her videos or have gone to her.
Can you imagine? Like, I don't know who they are. Sometimes I meet them, but everywhere I go, there's always a few people who say, I'm here because I saw you on Instagram. And they've come specifically because they saw me on Instagram. Yeah, very interesting. So anyway, when Shani and I just talked this morning, but when we get our, well, not when when all my neurons are firing in one direction, we'll talk more about it, but that's the plan for now.
To invite Shani up to be in the camera with you so we can all appreciate the marvelous.
Hey, Shani, would you just come and, because I'm saying your name all the time.
Yeah, I want to see her. Yeah.
There she is. No, he wants to make sure that you're showing. Okay.
Oh, wow. Look at all of you.
Yeah, you see, that's the view that I get all the time.
It's so fun. Am I done now?
I think you're done. Okay. Oh, you did that well. Okay. Are we all done? Oh, Saranda has something more.
Are you going to be on TikTok? I don't have TikTok, but should I get it?
Yes. Yes. So she actually is on TikTok because other people have gotten her videos from Instagram and then posted them on TikTok. So she's already got like momentum going on. But yes.
Yes means I should get a TikTok account. I mean,
You should.
Okay.
I mean,
I think that this conversation can take place off camera. You know, to be serious about this for just a minute, it was an interesting conversation recently because we're talking, you know, Master did things that were considered quite unorthodox at the time, and Sri Teshwar even questioned him. You know, you've heard that. You know, Master said, well, you can do pure gold, but I have to make it into jewelry, so I have to do things like advertise and do miracles and, you know, healing, bring your sick friends. You know, that was my favorite of one of his posters. And basically the medium today is this. And this is the way you communicate. Sai Ganesh actually said it well. It's an information delivery system. And whatever we think about it, that's what it is. This is how information is delivered, and we can not participate in it, but then there's not an alternative way to deliver the information. And so here it is. This is the way, and it has its own rules, and it has its own culture. I mean, we're by no means compromising ourselves. I'm not suggesting this skin cream or, you know, anything like that. But doing what we're doing, and in this particular situation, needing enormous sums of money, it just behooves us to really to think in those terms. So we'll see what happens. And it won't matter, because what we're going to do is just try to increase the impact of the sharing of Master's teachings. Swamiji, from the time he was expelled from SRF, he every time he needed money, no matter how much money he needed, he found a way to share the teachings more dynamically But he would do it because he needed money. He had to build the retreat. Who was going to build the retreat? The whole community up there. He had to buy land. And the sums of money, although they're smaller dollars than we are, proportionally were about the same as what we're facing from the point of view of how much manpower he had. But he would always, he'd make a record, he'd go on a tour. Whenever he needed money, he'd set up a lecture tour. And so he was out there sharing the teachings because he needed money, but he wasn't doing it for the money per se. He was just sharing the teachings. The only exception in his whole life was he took a job with the Peace Corps to train the people who are going to India because he wanted to train them about the spiritual culture. It turned out most of them weren't interested. So he had to sort of became the arranger of getting them the people they really wanted. But he talked to a small group. But that's the only time he ever took a job. Other than that, he always just served more dynamically and had the financial flow. So I feel like I'm very honest in this. And that's what crossed my mind. Even back when he was in SRF and he wanted to build a men's monastery, and they had no money to do it. And so he started importing harmoniums and a few other Indian things. And he started importing harmoniums in order to build a monastery for the men. And he said, some people just made fun of him, but he did that for a while. He earned a little bit of money, and then a huge donation came. And some people felt, well, your efforts didn't cause anything, but he felt that what helped magnetize that was that he made the effort. And that was when I heard myself say to someone, oh, I don't need to do that. I don't need the money. And then I thought, my God, what are you talking about? You need so much money. So I felt like we really need to do it. Thus, the fact that this year looks really different in terms of travel, I just think that the timing is perfect, too, in that respect. So we'll see what happens. Wish us luck. Okay, that's it. Thank you.